Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I am on with the Director of Innovation at Beck's Hybrids. His name is Brad Fruth. Brad, thanks for being on with me, man.
Oh, thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, dude. Well, this is going to be a good conversation. I'm interested in what a Director of Innovation does. So we'll get to that in a minute, but let's answer the first question. What does it mean for you, Brad, to be intentional?
That's a great question, Mark. I think to be intentional with your people means that you're getting up every single day thinking about how you can serve others. And I don't know of a way to be intentional, but to often take off, what we're thinking in our selfish thoughts and to think about others. So
I love it. I love it, man. As you say that, I'm thinking about Charlie Funk, Mr. Funk. He was the ag teacher at Sabika High School in north central Minnesota, near where I grew up. And he was in the same region. I had been a regional president, and he'd taken at least an interest. I think at least his job, as he saw it, was to wake up every day and take a vested interest in his students.
mm-hmm.
Now, I wrote a scholarship application, and he was on a committee that oversaw the selection of those people writing these applications. And I sort of half-assed it, let's be honest. Like, I did not really put my best foot forward on this. And Mr. Funk cornered me at the state FFA convention, and he let me have it. Like, he let me have it, man, about the halfway attempt that I had put. And he said, I vouch for you anyway because I know who you are, but don't ever do that again. And the rest of my life, I have paid deep attention to what my proposals look like, what my applications look like, all because somebody was intentional enough to wake up and say, "This is what I do, man."
Yeah, I think so often today in society, I mean, we are selfish, right? I mean, we are born with that sin mentality. And, I think I look back on people that have impacted me in my career, or even things that happen through the week when you're like, oh my word, like somebody intentionally sent me this note or checked in or, did something for me. Like they didn't just wake up and, be like, oh crap, my schedule's full and I got to do this, I got to do that. Like somebody was thinking about somebody else. And to me, that's about being intentional, and that's how you impact others.
Absolutely. Good stuff, man. Well, tell us about you, Brad. Give us a little background on
Yeah.
you. What does a director of innovation at Beck's Hybrids do? Talk to us.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been very blessed to be part of the Beck's organization here for the last 20 years.
Wow.
I started out as an intern a long time ago in a land far away, and was able to get hired on full time back in 2004. I have a background in IT, so I'm actually a network engineer by trade, and started out when Beck's was a much smaller company. I think I was employee number 68 or something like that. I had no idea of the rocket ship that I was about ready to strap myself to, which was known as Beck's Hybrids. And so, started out in a very small IT group, being a jack of all trades and master of none, and really growing up here within the organization. And so, had the opportunity to see the business scale and grow. And our business has been scaling for many, many years. Worked my way, through the organization for a number of years. I ran kind of the IT operations side of our house, help desk, network systems, all that kind of fun stuff, which is really fun when you're in a growing and scaling business. And have worked out on different projects here at Beck's around digital strategy and IT systems. And we really, Sonny and Scott Beck saw a vision for, in a growing and scaling business, how do we continue to look at what's new? And so they wanted to start an innovation group. And I'll start by telling you what innovation is not. And so what we saw is, when we took a little bit of a landscape of what some other companies were doing, we saw some other groups that have these innovation groups that, will get a fancy office building downtown, a bunch of whiteboards, some fancy IKEA furniture, and then apparently magical unicorn ideas come flying out the back end. And what we saw was, in some of those groups, like, their culture was either so rigid or so toxic that they couldn't innovate within. And I was like, I don't really want to work for a company that has to do that, right? and they agreed, and they're like, that's not what we want here. And so luckily I got to create this position of being true to who we are in Beck's exceptional customer service and brand value, and really creating a department that, number one, is focused on how do I help different department heads evaluate and implement disruptive change. It can be so easy when you're in a growing and scaling business to have to worry about how to keep the lights on. And if you have to do 20% more every single year without adding headcount or without adding overhead, that can be a very difficult challenge. And so I meet department managers where they're at. We basically serve as internal consultants. Some of them, it means that we help with everything from product ideation to implementation. Some need help with a cash flow and introduction to a startup company. And as I say, some department managers don't give me the time of day, and that's all perfectly acceptable. We also do a lot of startup interfacing while we don't invest. We love to be a matchmaker between innovative companies that are really driving net farm income and capital, and how can we help both of those worlds. And then, as a family owned and independent company, we get to look at the future of what that means for a company like us to remain competitive and remaining to bring value to the farm gate. So, Mark, in a nutshell, that's why I told people I have the best job at Beck's Hybrids, is that our team gets to kind of work on all of that stuff within the innovation space.
That sounds really cool. Wow. I mean,
It is, but I will share with you, like, it took a little bit of time. Okay. And I will just share with you, from a leadership perspective, I had to go from an IT mindset. So in IT, you get instant feedback,
Sure.
right? It either works or it doesn't. Someone's either happy or they're about ready to rip your head off.
Right.
And to go from that, from being told no 100 out of 100 times, was a little bit of a change that I had to kind of get through. And so I have a phenomenal support system here at Beck's Hybrids. I have great leaders on all sides, and they really help me through that. And know that, hey, even though you're getting told no a bunch, like, you use those no's to shape a yes. So sometimes people can't always tell you what they want. Sometimes they know what they don't want. And so you have to use that to help shape the vision and shape the reality. So whether it's internal, whether it's an external customer, that's I've learned to gather all that all feedback is it can be relevant feedback. So whether it's a no, sometimes is just as much valuable as a yes. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
Well,
that's
yeah.
what I kind of had to wander a little bit as we kind of got to those core competencies.
Yeah. It's such a unique role, but it really fits the theme of intentional leadership very well, because you're playing, I mean, you're playing in a number of different buckets, but it's all designed to be really, really helpful, from what I'm seeing. So if
Yeah.
can you give us an example of, so one of the things I'm hearing, Brad, is you do a lot internally. So with an internal department manager that may be working on a special project, or maybe they're struggling with something, could you give us just like to give us details, but an example of a problem?
Yeah, so I'll give you just an example, and the people internally are sick and tired of me talking about these projects, so that probably tells me that we're on the right path. But we're spending, so at Beck's, we not only sell corn, soybeans, and wheat products to customers, but we also run a very large farm internally as we're creating all those hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gives us a unique opportunity that we have to eat our own dog food. So products that we want to promote or talk about farmers, a lot of them that we use on the farm. Everybody is very focused on how do we do more with less, and automation and robotics is what I think is a huge part there. So, we're working with our production team right now on a couple of pilot projects
Mm-hmm.
to see how we would implement these technologies into our workflows. Um, Farmers are super efficient in what they do, but one of the projects that we're working on is we don't really know what the ROI of some of these new autonomous products are, because we don't use them the exact same way. So having somebody going out and spraying a field with a 120-foot boom and working 4 hours, we know that cost. Whereas if you say, hey, what if we use a smaller piece of equipment? It's going to take longer, but it can run 24 hours. We don't know what that cost is. So that's just one project where we're working with our production department on a small ROI project to really learn and say, okay, is this good? Is this bad? It might impact cost, but how does this impact people? How does this impact time? can we change chemical compounds that are within there? We don't understand all the other things around the peripheral that are going to drive that decision. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's our production manager's decision, but we're helping to kind of organize that and bring that information to him, so that he can make the best decision that he can about when is the right time to implement this.
Got it. Cool. So a lot of problem solving, a lot of just
A lot of problem solving. I would also say, I've had to do, well, being an IT guy, like I've had to really also learn how to coach people, because
Mhm.
change is actually pretty hard.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of coaching, I think, that we do. One of the misconceptions I think about innovation is that, like, I don't need more ideas.
Mhm.
Everybody's got ideas, right? Talk is cheap. And I've kind of become a jaded old man in the sense that, like, if you come into my office, Mark, and say, I have a great idea for a new project or a new business, I've had to get to the point now where I've been like, are you willing, Mark, to quit your job and do this full time? And if the answer is no, then that shows me that it's an idea, but you're not passionate about it. And what I find more than anything is innovation is driven by passionate people that
Mhm.
are concerned about their product and solving a problem for their customer. And that one simple question kind of flushes things out really, really fast. So I don't need more ideas. Oh, you can find them. There's tons of ideas out there, but passionate people that want to impact our customers, that is what I'm interested in. That's what I'm interested in building, is people and products where you can't deny their passion for it. Because we've all heard pitches, right? Where like, boy, they don't like that product, or that thing really, really fell on its face. And then we've also met people that you're like, I don't know if that's going to work, but that person's going to change it's definitely going to change this, or that the excitement is just palpable. So, um, I've had to kind of learn to help coach people around that,
Yeah.
and say, hey, this is a great idea, but it's not for us, or what are the other avenues that we can look at for it? But if you're willing to quit your job and work on an idea full times, that tells me you're going to be invested and you're going to see that thing through its ups and its downs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so there's a lot that we could unpack there. Let's tackle coaching really quick. And this is
Okay.
not necessarily sticking to our outline here, but let's go into coaching. I'm interested in what you've learned. We run a coaching company. This is what we do. This is where we make our money. So
Are you trying to sell me something now, Mark? Is
yeah,
that
well,
how?
let's go. Let's go. Yeah, we can talk off the air. But no, talk a little bit about coaching, what you've learned, what you found that's important, in helping, maybe helping someone go from where they are with an idea to that next iteration or that next generation, or just help them go from, in our world, we call it progression from A to B.
Yeah. So I will tell you that the best relationships that I have here at Beck's, some of them were, well, most of them were unintentional. And
Hmm.
so these are people that, might be in the same stage of life as you are, or people that you've worked together on a product team that you've gotten to know. And so, like, some of my best relation, and it's not intentional coaching, right? Like, hey, Mark and Brad, you have to meet for 1 hour on Wednesdays, and it's this very programmatic thing. The
Yeah.
best relationships, honestly, are the two-way type of relationships. And so, like, what I have found is that, once you build that relationship and trust increases, then you can have, like, conversations that mean something.
Hmm.
And I don't, there's probably a fancy word for it, but there are folks within the organization that I think I've got a good enough relationship. If they come to me with an idea, you know, I have to be very honest with them, number one, and I have to have high integrity in my communication. I can't say, well, that's a good idea, when I think, oh man, this thing sucks. So
Hmm.
I have to have high integrity. But normally, if you give them one or two small things to do, and really it needs to be one thing. I've been coached through my manager. You can only give somebody one number one, so don't give
Hmm.
them five. If they go back and do and execute on that one, like, hey, you know what? Why don't you call three people and just soft pitch them the idea and see what they say? So if they go do that on their own time, where they have risk, right, and it's
Yep.
outside of their business scope, and they do that, now that tells me that they're motivated. And now we can sit down and build out a bigger plan there. But if people show me that they're motivated and that they're passionate about something, I'm all in. Like, I'm like, okay, let's go run this thing. Let's see if this dog hunts. Like,
Yeah.
if you come in like, well, could you do this? Or, I read on Google this, it's like, oh my word, here we go. So I don't
Mhm.
know if that answers your question, but that's how
Like,
that's how I see some of that initial coaching on
mhm.
that idea. But once you have built that trust, I mean, I spent 10 minutes with a colleague this morning who came to me and was like, hey, I need to send this email to this vendor, and here's what I want to say. And I'm like, okay, you probably shouldn't say that. So let's work together on getting this thing massaged a little bit.
Mhm.
And here's how you're gonna communicate, and you're gonna learn more without saying what you want to say. So
Right. Yeah. Or saying it the way that you feel like saying it.
yeah, I have a lot of deleted emails in my box that should stay that way, right?
Right. Yes. Yes. The rule of thumb around here is if you're questioning whether or not you should send it, default to not sending it.
Oh yeah, I've sent a lot of emails in my lifetime I wish I could take back. So
Yes. Yes. Yeah. The unsend feature only lasts for so many seconds before you before you can't pull that back. Now I can delete text messages though, so that's been handy.
yeah.
Um, it's important. It is important to catch ourselves. So it's interesting. I want you to just talk through some of that coaching that you do because I want the listeners to hear someone else just talking through what it feels like to coach someone, even just something as simple as, sending this email. It takes intentional leaders who have trust built up with people in the organization to help someone unwind their feelings,
Mhm.
take a deep breath, move through that email, coach them through writing a better version of the email. And that's, I mean, how much time are you going to save that person that came in this morning?
Yeah. I
Right.
think, as we talk through this, Mark, like people um they want honest they want honest communication, and they want to know that somebody cares. And if you show that, like, then, I mean, I had another individual in my office this morning that works with a startup company, and I had to like give him a little dose of encouragement, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and so I showed some interest, asked some questions. They started to share something that they were struggling with, and then it's a little bit of, hey, man, I know that you're focused on this, but life's good. Like, here
Yeah.
is all the great stuff going on, and you're distracted with this one little thing, but don't focus on that when there's all this good stuff going on. And so
Yeah.
some of that is like they just needed somebody to know that I cared. I asked some questions, and then
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff comes out. So people want genuine communication. And then if you're intentional about reaching out, it could be just a, yep, I'm doing fine, see ya, okay, fine. Or it could be all of a sudden you're on the phone for an hour, and here's what's going on in my personal life, or here's what's going on at church, or this other thing that I'm involved in. But that intentionality, and then just genuinely caring, like that, to me, that's like 90% of it. And then you just listen.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well stated, man. Well put. Well put. All right, let's talk a little bit about, building talent. I'm sure you get to look under in some of the startups that you guys that you're
Yep.
observing. You get to see how people are doing things. You've been in an organization that's grown rapidly I don't know if it's rapidly, but has grown significantly over the last 20 years since you've been there. I don't know, what is the head count today? If you were 68, what's Beck's at
I
now?
think we're 940, 950, something like that.
It's almost 1,000, right? Wow. That was
Yep.
so first 10%.
Yeah. Yes,
So,
sir.
so let's focus in on that, right? That's a different equation than many get to solve or get to live through in the course of their career. So what has worked for you guys in that attraction and retention? Because that's a big feat in the industry
Yeah.
too.
So I don't know what the current stats are. There's somebody around here smarter than me, but roughly if you're adding 100 people per year, we're getting 3,000 applications for those roles.
Mm.
So to me, what the model that we've had here at Beck's, and Sonny Beck tells us this all the time, it's more about the soft skills here at Beck's, and your first interview is probably going to be a culture interview. And what I mean by culture is we want to know what makes you tick. We want to see if you're motivated. We want to see what your soft skills are. A lot of the roles, I mean, you can teach people a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're going to come in and let's say, you know, work on my team or work in another team, we're assuming you're fairly competent in your core capabilities because you applied for a role. You know, what we don't know is, the things around your attitude. How do you show up? How do you talk about others? Like, are you going to be a good fit? I often describe Beck's as a farm that happens to own a business in a positive light, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things that we do are built on the family farm model, right? We work hard, we play hard. There's times where you're working your butt off. There's times where, you know, you can leave at 4:30 and catch your kid's little league game. Like that stuff comes with it. But like if you're wanting, so I'll just give you an example here, Mark. Like if you want a rigid corporate ladder
Mm-hmm.
with like, here's the exact steps, this is probably not the place for you. If you
Right.
want to work hard and be rewarded for that, this is definitely the place for you. And so during those culture interviews, we're trying to flesh that out. And you don't always get it right, but then the second interview is okay, let's talk about the technical skills of the actual role that, you know, can you code? Do you know anything about a network? Can you operate a computer? And so that's where you're dealing that. The third interview, then we normally bring in other people from the organization. So we'll have you interview, you know, if you're interviewing for an IT job, you might meet with the director of education or somebody in production, right? And we're just getting another read to make sure that there's not some other thing that we're looking at. But we're hiring more. If you show up and work hard, we can teach you everything else. But I can't motivate you and I can't instill that work ethic within you. You got to show up with that. Those are the folks that we want.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
we've
like it.
hired, I know there's been multiple hires here where we've hired people without a job description, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, you are super talented. You are smart. You can solve problems. We'll figure all this stuff out later. Now, our HR team doesn't like for me to say that. But there have been people where so the best way maybe I can describe it is we hire people, not positions.
Mm. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. I love
Are you
it.
looking for a job, Mark? You looking for some place to work?
Maybe they're looking to acquire a training company, and we can make a we.
Anything's possible as long as you're passionate, Mark. As long as you're passionate.
Well, it's funny, right? As you talk through your description of people going through startups and being through this, going through those highs and lows, right? There's a lot more lows than there are highs. And so often it feels so much like you're just climbing to the next peak. You get 5 minutes at the peak and then you're right back down the other side, getting ready to, look long enough to check the horizon. You can see there's another peak out there, but you don't exactly know how you're going to get there, but you got to go down so that you can come back up. And that's business. A lot of people struggle. And I think this could be applied to someone's career as well. But when entrepreneurship, startup life, running a small business became my way of life, when I really understood the difference between this and chasing some certain level of success that I hadn't had in mind when I started doing this. There came a day when I realized, like, after hitting some goals, like, well, no, really, this is it. Like, this is the job. This is what we do. Right? Like, we make phone calls, we run programs, and we put people in events. We go sell deals. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, and that's actually what we created. I get a lot of people that come to me actually saying, "Man, I want to do more coaching. I want to get into coaching. How do I get into coaching?" In my immediate response, similar to yours, is automatically, are you ready to spend 90% of your time selling and marketing yourself as a coach?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the job.
Yep.
That's the job. Like, we have a couple hundred people actively engaged in our coaching programs right now with their various clients. That'll be 500 by the end of the year. That's spread across a team of coaches. I got into this as a speaker, as a trainer. And Brad, I mean, over the course of the year, I might spend 20 to 30 days actually training or speaking. The rest of the time, running the show.
Yeah.
Selling, marketing. And people have to be like, you just have to get to a point where you recognize, like, that's actually, you know what? That's actually fun. I like doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think when we talk with startup companies, often we're having a conversation around, I understand the product you're selling, but what are you good at? Right?
Mhm.
What's your strategic capability? What gives you the right to win? And sometimes you got to really dig to get that out of them. And yes, you're here selling me this product, but like you're also admitting to your point, you're going to do very little of that. But what's the actual product, and what gives you the
Yep.
ability to win a customer? Sometimes those are two different things, and you got to dig around a little bit to find that nugget.
Yeah, and I'll let you down a little insight. I 100% agree with that, and here's why. So going through my FFA days as a state FFA officer, as an FFA member, going to camps, and then being a paid facilitator for National FFA as a leadership. So I'd come to Indianapolis and get trained in my train the trainer ways, and then go out and either train state FFA officer teams with the Blast Out program, or go on the weekends and do, back then it was called Made for Excellence, MFE and ALD programs. And so this is going back to the early 2000s when I got my start doing that. I loved it. I loved it so much. I'm like, in some way, shape, or form, I'm going to make a career out of doing this. But then I got into my, call it the professional career, my big kid job, right? I got a job selling software to feed mills. I was selling software into feed mills. It was my first sales job in the ag industry. And I got to go through some sales training, and Brad, it was terrible. It was some of the I was actually assaulted. I felt assault. I felt like one of these woke kids these days that's like offended that this could be that bad, but it was poorly done.
Mm.
And I had learned through my work in agriculture education like what we thought great training looked like. And that really stuck with me for the 10 years that I worked in industry before I founded this company now 11 years ago. And I tell you what, man, it is one of our big goals. Like, one of the big goals of Thrive Today is to disrupt training in agribusiness forever. When I think about things that actually get me up, that get me excited about making the next sales call, going on the next meeting, making the next podcast recording, I mean, it's that.
Yeah. So like what you just described, Mark, like you can put together a lot of fancy stuff, right? That you lead training and you lead coaching. In my opinion, like the passion that you just displayed, describing that over the last 30 seconds will win you more deals and will
Right.
convey that to more people than any marketing slick or any social media ad ever will.
Exactly.
That's the thing that you can't manufacture, and
Mhm.
that's real, and people love that authenticity, and that's how you build an enduring business, in our opinion.
Yeah,
So,
I love it. And man, I would just share to anybody listening, everybody's got their own version of that,
mm,
right? You're not, not everybody's going to be the training disruptor or the biological disruptor or the seed disruptor, but you can have your own thing in your own way. That's your reason for being here. Let's be honest. There's a lot more easy industries that you could go work in to feed your family,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, and I always kind of make fun of my fellow employees. We all have side hustles, right? Like we all love ag, we all love working in a family-owned independent business. But like, my kids and I run a little show pig business. We have people here. I have a coworker in marketing that just got into like candle making. And you hear her talk about making candles, you're like, oh my word. And she's doing very, very, very well, like
Yeah.
extremely well. And so like that passion, even though that business, it might be a primary business, secondary income, right? But
Mhm.
it doesn't always mean that you are building $1 billion valuation business. But if you are passionate about what you do, your customers will see that, your financing people will see that. I mean, that is what is going to impact people and impact farmers more.
Yeah.
So,
Love it, man. Great conversation. Okay, this is fun. Let's
yep.
let's get under the hood of Brad a little bit though before we run completely out of time, because we
Okay.
probably got about 10 minutes to bring this in. So let's get in there. What has been the biggest hurdle or challenge that you've had to overcome over the course of your career, Brad?
Oh, Mark. Okay. So I I think the biggest challenge for me, we had a training that we did here, and so I've been here a long time. This has been more than 10 years ago.
Mhm.
We did a training where it was where you had to rate yourself and then your peers had to rate you.
Mhm.
And probably the most difficult thing that I had to overcome was I thought I had a perception of how I was perceived in the business, and the feedback I got through that training was not kind.
Mm,
Okay. And so one of the things that I've had to work with is that we use a lot of disc profile stuff internally. So I'm a high D, little I.
okay.
I've had to learn to balance that and be very aware of my other friends on the bottom of that scale. And that, I thought that, everything was going great. We had great relationships. And that was a complete like grind to a halt. You suck, Brad. And so that's probably one of the biggest things that I've had to overcome is as our organization has grown, that DI works for a time. But when you're working in a team with others, sometimes you have to adjust your natural style to adjust to others. So
Mm,
empathy, listening, like those types of things are not necessarily my go-to. And so it was through that feedback, even though it was very difficult to hear and very difficult to deal with, I've had to work I had to been diligent and intentional about working on that and then be hyper aware of how I'm being perceived when I'm in those situations with people that don't think and act like I do.
how do you process through that when you get that rough bit of feedback?
Well, so so when I get feedback like that, I need time to think
Mm-hmm.
because my natural tendency is to lash out and be angry. And so what I've had to learn is to thank them for all that feedback, but I need time to process that because my gut reaction is not going to be the one that I need to go with. And so I do my best thinking in the barn. So whether it's scoop and poop or grind and feed or doing something, I need at least an evening to just process, get out what my intentional thinking are, and then say, okay, how should I approach this? What's the right way to do it? So I need a little bit of time to kind of cool down.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to not express that emotion immediately. And then normally, if I talk it through, my wife is a huge support system, so she's always got great advice on, hey, you need to cool down, you moron, and listen here. So that's kind of how I deal with it.
Yeah.
And then I've had to learn to ask really good questions. One of the here there's two great books that I've read in the last couple of years, but Chris Voss has a really good book out about negotiating. And one thing that I tell a lot of people, he has a great concept in there called labeling.
Mm-hmm.
So you always want to, when you get feedback, what I've had to also learn to do is to label it and just say, okay, what I heard you say was this, and this to make sure that one, I understood, and then you're reiterating it back to them to make sure that it was how they wanted to communicate and what they wanted to say. And so that's part of, when people come to me with conflict, one, you better have gone to the other person first and made that known. And two, most of my coaching is around like, you got to label, this is
Mm,
what I heard, and this is how I might feel. Can we get together, the next day or something and talk this through? So
yeah.
that's kind
Yeah.
of how I've had to deal with it. I don't know if that's the right way, but that's how I kind of process through it.
Well, the important thing to me is you have a way, right?
Yep.
And that's where that would be my encouragement for those driving down the road in their truck, thinking about the last bit of feedback you got from your spouse or from your coworkers or from a customer or whatever. Like, hey, how did you react in the moment? Did that get you? Is that netting you the results that you like or not? And then we can adapt and adjust from there,
Yeah.
right?
Because I know,
Uh,
like, when I get a piece of feedback I don't like I know that I'm going to go through this roller coaster. And
mm-hmm.
I'm like, Brad, you got to wait it out. Like, I'm like, no, I need to act. I need to say something. I need to send an email. And it's like, I just know I have to wait till the
Yeah.
next day to respond, even though my gut is like, you better say something and you're going to throw the book at him.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it? Uh, President Bush had a speech one time, and I don't even know if this is the right attribution, but like, so oftentimes we judge others by their worst day and ourselves by our best intentions.
Mm-hmm.
And and so that's what I have to keep that in check when I want to respond in a unkind way.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I don't remember who exactly said that, but I've heard that. We've actually used that in our programs before. That saying, we judge others by their worst efforts or their worst day, and we judge
Yep.
ourselves by how I intended to do it,
Yep.
right? So
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
really good. Also, you mentioned, since you brought it up, let's talk about books, resources, podcasts. You mentioned Chris Voss, which I highly recommend. I don't even, we get often asked to teach negotiation as part of this, any sales training that we do. And all I do is just play Chris Voss videos
Yeah.
because I
So
think it's
if
the
you,
best.
I don't know who does his audiobook. I've seen he has a master class too, where he
Yeah.
does the narration. If you've
Yep.
never heard him speak, his tone, his
Mm-hmm.
tenor, his cadence, you'll
Yep.
know why he's really good at his job.
Yep.
But I watched them. He did a masterclass series that was absolutely fantastic, and I've used that more on how to deal with relationships and coworkers and parenting my own kids, I think, than
Yeah.
I have actually negotiating.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny. So just for those listening in, it's Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. That's the name of his
Yep.
book. And you can download the Masterclass app, and I bought a whole year subscription just to watch his. Like
Yeah.
I've now watched other ones, but I got it just to watch his. So one of the, you mentioned labeling earlier, right? So I'm now listening for people's tonality in what they're telling me. And if you use this, and I'm not using this to manipulate my wife, I'm using this to try and serve her better. And so if I'm hearing the tone, like if she sounds mad, right, I might just repeat back to her and put a label on and say, oh, you sound mad. And
Or
it's
to
as
even,
simple as that.
yeah, or I think he calls it his late night DJ voice. Like sometimes you
Yeah.
just have to slow down
Yeah.
with
Yep.
your cadence and then reiterate to create a pause point. So yeah, it's a fantastic book. The other one that I highly recommend is Unreasonable Hospitality by
Yes.
Will Gerardo. That book is absolutely phenomenal. And I will tell you, at Beck's, we have, good product. We have horrible price. We have great customer experience. And
Mm.
that one has been, it is, Will does a great job of kind of summarizing, I think, those companies that really focus on the customer service aspect
Yep.
and what that looks like every single day. It's a fantastic book. He also has, I think, a LinkedIn group and a newsletter where he
Hmm.
shares stories that people share with him of
Oh,
unreasonable hospitality that's really inspiring. So I highly recommend that book for anybody that's looking to increase how they provide service, how they show up, and how they think about serving customers.
love it, man. I cannot recommend that book enough. I literally bought a copy for every single one of my team members, and we are going through, and every Monday in our hour and a half team meeting, we spend 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes on a concept from the book, and we pass it around and let different team members teach different components of it. But that's yeah, Will Guidara, Unreasonable Hospitality, man. That was a game changer for us.
Yeah, and I also, if I can slip a third in here,
Yeah, go ahead.
Andy Andrews has a traveler's gift, and I actually just gave it to my two oldest kids that are in eighth grade, and it's another fantastic book. So,
It's called A Traveler's Gift.
yep,
Okay.
yep, from Andy
Got it.
Andrews. So,
Very cool. All right, man. So before we run out of time, what do you do to keep your energy up and maximize that productivity? We'll put those together.
oh gosh. Well, time is our most valuable and limited resource. So I think you have to show up with a good attitude every single day and be excited. I'm extremely blessed to be able to work in ag. Very blessed to work here at Beck's Hybrids. We can't always control what happens around us. We can control how we react to them. It is awfully boring to work with people that are not motivated or, oh man, till 5 o'clock comes. So I think that you have to keep the energy up. So our faith drives a lot of what we do here at Beck. So if you're not starting your day in the Word, it's going to be a rough day for you. And you have to show up. You got to work hard. You got to have fun. Otherwise, life's going to be pretty bland. So.
But man, love it, love it, love it. All right, what's the biggest thing you want to improve on this year?
Oh man. So the biggest thing that I want him to improve on, that's a tough question, Mark. Like this is like your employee reviews that you do every year where you have to come
Yeah.
up with something. Um, you probably do this for a living. I would say that the biggest, like what I enjoy more than anything is watching other people around me and that we impact succeed. So
Mm,
I have to be constant. If I'm doing my job, one, I think I'm working myself out of a job,
mhm,
and two, people around me are performing at exceptional levels. And so one of the things that I know I need to do is to be better at praising and be better to celebrate the wins, because I'm a tactical DI personality. I want to get crap done and then move on to the next thing. But we need to take time to celebrate our success, and I need to take more time to celebrate those people around me and reward them when they do really, really good things.
mhm. Great answer, man. Great answer. All right, where do we go to learn? I know we can all Google this, but where do you recommend we go to check out more about Beck's hybrids and connect with you,
Yeah.
Brad?
Yeah. So definitely our website, beckshybrids.com. If you click about us, there's an innovation page that
Mhm.
explains everything that I want to do. Against advice from other people, my Calendly link is on there too. So you can, if you want to chat, my time is your time. If there's space available, you can jump on anytime. Would love to chat with you about ag, innovation, hogs, whatever you want to talk about. Would be more than happy to do that. But yeah, you can connect with us wherever you can find us.
Love it, man. Thank you for doing the show.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity, Mark.